The big question for this segment is, what are complex physical systems, and what drives increasing complexity in the non-living world? Though it may sound perverse to put it like this, complex physical systems are simple complex systems. They're complex, but their components are well behaved. They obey predictable rules like the cells in von Neumann's cellular automata. The early universe seems to have been a complex physical system, and it contained other complex physical systems. Within a split second of the Big Bang, we already had energy that operated according to some basic rules. For example, gravity tugged at anything with mass. Within a second, some of that energy had congealed to take the form of particles of matter. These also operated according to basic rules. Quarks, for example, combined in threes to form protons and neutrons. Protons had positive electric charges, neutrons had no electric charges, and so on. Here already, there was enough diversity to create some simple, complex things, as protons and neutrons combined to form simple atomic nuclei. Then, about 380,000 years after the Big Bang, when things were cool enough, the positive charges of these nuclei attracted negatively charged electrons to form the first atoms. But if complexity depends on flows of free energy, was there enough to drive complexity beyond these simple first stages? In the hot, young universe, there was plenty of heat energy, but few flows of free energy because everything was at about the same temperature. We can tell this by studying the cosmic background radiation that was released when the first atoms formed. So, how could you get more complexity in such a simple, smooth young universe? Fortunately for us, there are subtleties here, and they depend on the original operating rules of our universe. One of the most important concerns the nature of gravity. Gravity likes to pull things together. That means that from the point of view of gravity, the homogeneous, smooth early universe was in a very non-random state. It had very low entropy. Gravity wanted to muss things up. As the Australian cosmologist Charles Lineweaver puts it, gravity tended to make the universe more clumpy, and as it did so, it created new flows of free energy as the clumpier bits were crushed together and heated up to form stars that began to pump heat and light into surrounding space. In this way, increasing clumpiness created new flows of free energy that could drive increasing complexity. This module will look at some of these new forms of physical complexity. It'll begin with physical complexity first at very small scales, with nuclei and atoms, and then at the gigantic scale of the first stars. Then it'll shift to chemical complexity, the creation of new elements and new types of matter. Chemical complexity is driven by the electromagnetic force, and it has to be studied at the nanoscale of atoms and molecules. Eventually, this module will take us back to large objects, as it describes the new forms of geological complexity created as planetary systems began to emerge around young stars. Now, if gravity was providing the free energy for increasing complexity, does this mean that gravity was somehow working against the second law of thermodynamics? Not at all. We've already seen that as free energy flows, it degrades into heat energy. Run fast, and you start sweating. The second law is perhaps the most cunning law we know of. As free energy flows, creating more complex things, it is degraded into heat energy. So, creating complex things seems to speed up the inevitable degradation of free energy into heat energy. It guarantees, in fact, that eventually, gazillions of years in the future, thank you, the universe really will turn into pure mush. Very cunning, and pretty scary for complex things like us, until you remember that we will have been dead for thousands of billions of years before the universe throws in the towel at what physicists call the heat death of the universe.